But that hasn't stopped the response by some conservatives in America from being like a broken fertiliser machine, loud and completely full of shit. Sarah Palin said that the new policy was like a kid asking for a punch in the face. Unfortunately, forgetting the fact that it isn't like that at all. And the next best thing to never thinking that analogy would be never saying it out loud.
I guess she's right in a way, John, but she just hasn't finished the analogy. I guess it's like a kid asking for a punch in the face whilst that kid is armed with an automatic machine gun.
Well, she went on to say, it's like getting out there on a playground, a bunch of kids, getting ready to fight, and one of them says, go ahead, punch me in the face, I'm not going to retaliate, do what you want to with me. Whereas, in fact, what it's actually like is a kid going into a playground and saying, who likes being hit in the face? Exactly, no one. So let's all agree not to hit each other in the face. Anyone, for instance, who promises not to hit me in the face, I promise I will not hit them in the face. But if they do then hit me in the face, I will definitely hit them in the face back. And let's not focus on that part. Let's focus on the everyone not getting punched in the face bit instead. Whereas Sarah Palin, for instance, is like a kid going into that playground during the discussion and saying, hey, I'm pretty sure he's asking us all to hit him in the face. Unless I'm either an idiot or willfully misinterpreting what he's saying for my own ends, but I'm really pretty sure he wants us to hit him in the face.
Bugle feature section now, and food. We all need it, John. Without it, we all be pretty tired and angry.
Yeah. Oh, really? Tired and angry rather than dead. It's interesting that was the way your mind went there. Would be cranky without food. Missing a meal. Never like to do that.
And the extent to which we as a species are dependent on food is proved by the fact that even Jesus ate food.
Yeah.
And it turns out that over the years, he's been eating more and more food in paintings of the Last Supper. Apparently, over the years, in the representations of the Last Supper, the portions that Jesus and his squad, what are they called?
Posse?
Posse. Jesus. The Blazing Squad, or was that someone else? I can't remember.
No, it wasn't that.
Right.
Well, it definitely wasn't Hell's Angels.
Anyway, their meals have got bigger and bigger over the years as the size of meals elsewhere has got bigger. In fact, a recent painting by the prominent American artist Chuck McCalliok recently showed Jesus eating a quadruple-decker burger at the Last Supper. So maybe there's some truth in this. And he also, he of course, he could do magic with food. Jesus famously fed the 5,000 or so sneakily. Could turn a quarter-pounder into a half-pounder. Often while no one was looking. He didn't always draw attention to his miracles.
That was a selfish miracle.
Yeah.
Just for himself. These researchers compared the size of food in 52 of the most famous portrayals of the Last Supper and found that the size of the main dish grew 69%, the size of the plate 66%, and the bread 23%. And at that rate, Andy, Jesus would have died of diabetes long before he died of crucifixion, screaming at the heavens, "Forgive them, Father, they know not how to use low-fat cream in their sauces." Also, let's cut the artist a little slack here for wanting to give Jesus a heftier portion. This was his last meal, for f***'s sake. Why stop there? Throw in a dessert for the lad, too. Maybe some barbecue pulled pork, perhaps an artisan cheese board and coffee. Sure, it's not good for his arteries, but let's remember, he's about to die soon anyway.
I'm not sure he was much of a pork eater, as I recall.
But that's what I mean. It doesn't matter. It's his last meal, Andy.
Right.
Pulled pork is delicious.
Yeah. So maybe, well, that could have been. Maybe that did happen. Maybe that was the start of Christianity.
How's his day going to get worse?
It's interesting, actually. His the feeding the 5,000 story. It's fascinating. There's a recently discovered and as yet unpublished Gospel according to Alvin that was dug up in a archaeological dig in Egypt. And
to Alvin?
Yeah.
Not the chipmunk?
No, just Alvin.
Oh, okay, right.
He was one of the lesser disciples. I
thought it was a squeakier.
He was a standby disciple. He was like a temp. He used to come in when one of the other ones went on holiday.
Off the bench, or if one of them pulls a hamstring.
That's right. And he offers a radical new version of one of Jesus H. Christ's most famous miracles. Of course, the story goes that Jesus was then in his late 20s or early 30s. He'd just finished a particularly long an involved new parable in front of a sold-out 5,000-strong audience at an outdoor festival gig, when he noticed that his crowd was looking quite tired and hungry, and as the Gospel relates, and the audience was bored. And Salif, who was from Jericho, did heckle Jesus, and said unto him, Oi, Jesus, get off, that was self-indulgent rubbish, you've lost your edge. But Jesus refrained from telling Salif that he did not come down to where he worked and tell him how to clean toilets, for he was merciful, and believed his new parable to be artistically valid. It's Alvin, chapter 14, verse 12. So, therefore, Jesus had to pull something out of the bag, and in lieu of his usual dead mouse, live mouse encore, he promised to give the crowd 5 loaves of sliced white and 2 whole cod from his dressing room. That was his contractual rider at all of his major shows by this stage of his career. It's pretty similar to what you get these days as well, isn't it, John?
It's not too dissimilar, no.
Yeah. So, but he then buttered 4 of the loaves, filleted and mashed the fish, and shaped it into thin rectangles, which he then covered with breadcrumbs from the 5th loaf. So after a quick whiz in the frying pan, Jesus then lent a fish finger sandwich to each of his 12 disciples, even Thomas, who was vegan, and Andrew, who'd hated the smell of fish ever since being shoved into an aquarium on a school trip. The self-proclaimed Son of God then told the apostles to pay him back whenever they could. He hopped on his magic donkey, winked at the crowd, and skedaddled. Now, the disciples, being good Christian men, of course, they felt guilty about being the only ones with food in an increasingly bemused, ravenous and restless congregation. Therefore, each disciple lent his fish finger sandwich to a member of the audience, and inspired by this example, those spectators then passed their food on to the people sitting next to them, who in turn lent it to the people sitting next to them, and so on, until eventually 12 people sat at the back row were left clutching somewhat soggy and misshapen fish finger sandwiches, while each of the remaining 4,988 people in the capacity crowd was owed 1 fish finger sandwich. And in this way, although Jesus didn't actually technically feed the 5,000, he did enable them all to go home knowing that they were 1 fish finger sandwich in credit, which they could call in whenever they felt like a snack. And thus Jesus invented the principles of capitalist finance. So,
well, and it's interesting. Side note to these jokes about Jesus that we, but predominantly you, have been doing here. Yeah. Is that, as I mentioned to you beforehand, the guy who has been helping Paul out here building the new studio, he's a Honduran preacher.
Right.
He's here in New York to study the Bible, doing some construction work on the side. And he pointed out to Paul that Jesus is in the walls here.
Right.
So Jesus is just behind those 2 pieces of drywall over there, Andy, and I guess he's been listening in on everything you just said. I thought I could hear a pounding on the wall, and it must be him. That scared the life out of me. Oh, God, I've never been more relieved to see Paul through the window looking at a microphone. If that had been empty then, I think I'd have killed myself. Oh, God.
His wrath hath cometh.
Oh, boy. God, Jesus. Just quick to anger, isn't he?
Check Paul's hands, John. Check those. I'm glad you like my feeding the 5,000 story. It was I got a bit waylaid with my kid this week, being ill, cut into my writing time. That was a little excerpt from my best-selling book.
Best-selling by whose standards, Andy?
I don't know, but I got an email from a prominent online book retailer this week offering me my own book. It's still out there, Buglers, if you've not got your copy yet.